Good evening, dear friends and colleagues, and welcome to my first video ever, and also my first video on how to move from teacher-centered into learner-centered classroom. As we have agreed that we are going to divide the answer into stages which follow the same sequence of a normal lesson, which means that we are going today to start with warmers. Of course, all teachers start their lessons by warming students up using light activity in order to prepare them for learning or for the lesson. But in this video, I'm not going to talk in details about warmers because this is not the aim of my videos. I'm more concerned with teacher-centered and learner-centered. So my plan for this video is to provide an activity or a teacher-centered activity as a warm-up and discuss its problems, then provide an alternative which achieves the same aim and see if it can overcome the problems or it can avoid the problems of the first one. So let's start with an activity. One common way of warming students up is recycling vocabulary. And I chose recycling vocabulary in particular because it's very important and very useful inside the classroom, especially in our countries. Because as you know that we don't have much opportunity to practice English outside, or our students don't have much opportunity to practice English outside school. So it adds responsibility on the teacher to recycle frequently and regularly from time to time. So recycling vocabulary. Now let's make a comparison between what we already do in our classrooms and what we suggest doing and what differences are between them. First of all, let's think about what we do. How do you already recycle vocabulary inside your classroom? Can you think about it? Can you think about the last time you recycled vocabulary and how you did it and what problems you faced? Teachers try all the time to solve the problems. When they face a problem, they try to solve it using another technique. But all the versions of recycling inside our classrooms all go around one main idea, which is equivalence, asking for equivalence. So we give the students the version or the English version of the word and ask for the equivalent in Arabic or vice versa. So I ask him, for example, what's the meaning of storm? He says عاصفة, or I say عاصفة and he says storm. And sometimes I ask him to go to the board and write the word in order to check spelling. This is what we do inside our classroom. Some teachers try to ask one by one, and they want to finish all the students to recycle vocabulary with all the students at the same time. They go from one to one until they finish all the students. They finish the time of the lesson and they finish himself. After that, he will not have any time to do anything else or any effort himself to do anything, because he becomes very tired after doing all this work. So here we have a problem of time, we have a problem of effort in the part of the teacher, and here also we have a problem of management, because when you ask a student, the other students are free, they will start making problems. Now, some teachers try to solve this problem and to say, I will choose 5 students each time, and the next lesson I will choose a different group of students to recycle with. But this is also impractical, because if you are doing an activity with 5 students and leave the others without anything to do, this is inhuman and also impractical, because they also will start making noise. Another thing is that for the 5 students who you have recycled with or you have dealt with today, they will expect that they are not going to be asked tomorrow or then for the rest of the week. So they will not do any effort before the lesson, and they will not do any mental effort during the lesson or thinking or other. So they are doing nothing at all. And the other ones who are waiting for their turn to come to be asked, they are always threatened they are always worried to be asked a word, worried about being asked a word which they don't know or which they have learned but they forgot. So this kind of anxiety inside the classroom can result of lack of motivations. And then these are our practices inside the classroom, and which result in negative attitude towards language, and then we complain that students are demotivated, they don't have the motivation to learn. So we have to change this. Some other teachers say that they try something new, or something else, that they prepare a worksheet which has a list of words in Arabic, and in the beginning of the lesson they give the words or the worksheet to students. They ask them to write the equivalents for the list of words. They collect the paper or worksheets, go home, mark, and then return the paper or the worksheets to the students. Yes, this saves time, and this doesn't have the problem of management because students are working at the same time. But how much work is required from the part of the teacher? A lot of work. You know, if you have, for example, 3 classes, and in each class you have 40 students, so you have to mark and correct 120 worksheets every day. It means that after 2 or 3 weeks you will stop. You cannot manage to complete and to follow on, to continue doing this until the end of the school year. I think so. So let's be practical about what we can do. So what is the alternative of this? Now I'm thinking, or I will discuss an activity which is learner-centered. You know, the problems of all the problems of the teachers of the first activity comes from the idea that it is a teacher-centered. Teacher has to do everything with every student. Now let's try a learner-centered one. Now imagine that you have an elementary class and you want to recycle vocabulary of 2 topics that you have studied with your friends in the previous classes. For example, family and jobs. So today you are going, or you want to recycle words or vocabulary about family and jobs. So for example, you go to class and you greet your students. Then imagine this is your board. So you divide the board into 2 sections like this. Here you write the first heading, the topic you want to recycle, family. Here, jobs. You write this on the board. Then you ask your students to elicit the idea. You say, can you give me a word which is related to family? A learner says, father. So you write father. You do the same with jobs. For example, here a learner says doctor. So now students know what they are going to do under these headings, but they don't know the rules. Until now, the activity is teacher-centered because the teacher asks and writes on the board. Now the teacher will start giving instructions and telling the rules of the activity. Very simply, you will ask your students to come to the board in fours, and you need to have 4 board markers. This is all what you need to have for this activity, all 4 board markers. So come to the board and in fours. Only 4s are on the board. The other students are waiting for them to finish. Each student of the 4 has to write only 1 word, not more than this. And then he goes back to his seat and another student joins and writes his idea or his word. For that one who returned to his seat, he can come again, unlimited number of times. But each time he comes to the board, he has to write only 1 word, just to give opportunity for the largest number of students in the class. When students run out of ideas, this means that the first stage of the activity has come to an end, has finished. So at the end of the activity, you can have a version of the board like this. So imagine this is the board after the end of your lesson, of your first stage. So here, these are some ideas for family, and here's some ideas for jobs. Now it's not finished yet. Students are sitting on their seats. You ask them, now look at the board, look at these ideas, and check, see whether you agree with all these ideas or not. If you disagree with something, go to the board and change, remove, or correct. So students come also without the permission of the teacher. They come freely and make changes. For example, a student who sees that businessman is not relevant and does not fit under the heading family, but under the heading jobs. So he can remove from here and write here. Another one, he sees that spelling is the spelling of nephew is inaccurate. He can come and correct. So this is what they have to do at the second stage. until all students are satisfied with the result on the board. Now the activity is finished. It's very easy and straightforward, especially when it becomes a routine inside the classroom. But here's a question. Why I think that this activity is better than the first one? Just because it is a learner center, that learners, yes, this is an aim in itself, but there are a lot of other advantages for this activity. Whenever I want to achieve or to evaluate the effectiveness of an activity, I refer to 6 criteria. I call them double T, double M, double L. Double T, double M, double L. Let's see them. Double T, time and teacher. Double M, motivation and management. Double L, learning and learner or learners. Of course, time is saved in this activity because you have just 5 or 6 minutes. As I told you, first time it can take longer, but afterwards when it becomes routine, it will not take longer than 5 minutes. So time is saved. Teacher. The teacher is not inside the scene. He is not doing anything after giving instructions. He is keeping away from the scene and letting students do the activity. They go out, they think and discuss freely without any kind of intervention. So a teacher is doing almost nothing, but he is listening and watching actively. He is ready for questions. If 2 students disagree with an idea, they can refer to him. Motivation. Of course, because the activity, the students have responsibility over the learning and they come freely, independently, they can discuss, they are more motivated. They move, go to the board, come, they can check, evaluate. This is kind of motivation. Also, they are not threatened by the idea that they can be asked a word about a word that they don't know and be embarrassed among their mates or colleagues. Whenever there is anxiety inside the classroom, there is no motivation or there is a lack of motivation. Now students are free. They are not anxious. They are not stressed. They choose the words that they write and they choose not to come up to the board, not to write anything. Okay. Next thing is management. Of course, the students are busy, and whenever students are busy, they will not think of making problems because they are not free. They don't have time to do this. They are thinking about something else. Learning. Is learning taking place during this time? I think so. Because if you think students, if you think about what students do during this activity, they are looking at the board, thinking about words which is relevant to the headings, family or jobs. Then they are checking what other classmates wrote in order not to repeat a word under the same heading. Or for example, they are checking the spelling of what they have written or what their peers have written. They are evaluating whether they agree or disagree. All these are mental activities that are more likely to reinforce what students have learned before, and also they can learn a new vocabulary and the new words from the stuff on the board. Learner. Is the learner active? Of course, he is active, as you can see. And also the learner has the opportunity to show all what he knows. So in the first activity, which is teacher-centered, he asks the students about only one word. Now he can go to the board and write one word, another word, a third time. So he can go now unlimited number of times until he finished. And he also evaluates other peers or his peers' work. So he can show his abilities to write and also to evaluate and check. Now I have finished all what I want to say about this activity. I just want to tell you that it is very interesting inside the classroom and it's very useful. I've tried a lot of time. Just try it for not only one time and you are kind of worried if it does not work well at the first time. No, just do it 1, 2, and 3 times. After the 3rd time you do it, it will become easier. And if you have problems after the 3rd time, you can write comments to me and we can discuss together. Okay, this is the end of the video. Thank you so much for watching and meet you next Thursday with Leiden. Thank you and goodbye.